Good morning, Becca.
Hi, how are you?
Good. I'm so glad that you were able to connect with me today and talk so we could talk a little bit about mindful Seymour and
Yes, I'm
how
excited to do
he,
that.
yeah, mindfulness, pausing, self-regulation, all those things.
Yeah.
For those who don't know me, I'm a pediatric occupational therapist, and I have written this book, Mindful Seymour Pauses. The cover that you see in the background has been changed, but the title is still the same. I reached out to Becca to see if she would write a little bit about the book for me, and she agreed to do that as well as do a little talk today. Becca is a neurodiversity and autism expert. She's a speaker, she's a researcher and an author. So I'm love to hear a little bit more about your work, Becca, and also a little bit about like the book is about Seymour, who is impulsive. He's unaware of things that are going on around him. He has his mind on one thing, getting the ball and playing with it. And in the process of the doing that, he learns about the mistakes he makes and thinking about only himself. And then he learns from his sister, who is sort of the surrogate mom for him, about how he's impacting others and what their reactions are. And then he says, well, that doesn't feel comfortable, so I will do something different. Can you show me what to do? So that's the premise of the story. And then the ending of the story is his learning that he helping him understand that actually he's a caring and respectful and kind bird. He's a blue-footed booby, and when he slows down and pauses and thinks, he knows what to do and how to play with others, so it's fun for everyone. So that's a little bit of the background. We can go through some of the story too, but just to help make sense of your comments,
Yeah,
Becca, I wanted to give a little background on the story.
sure. I'm really glad that I got able to do this with you. And I am an autism and neurodiversity subject matter expert. I was diagnosed a little over 10 years ago myself at the age of 36. And I've dedicated myself to our community ever since. And I do that through DEIB work, which is diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And I think all human beings really deserve to feel like they belong in our shared spaces. And it's something that's not really afforded to folks who are neurodivergent, autistic, or any other way disabled. And so I work within my little small community of neurodiversity and autism, and also with the general disability community.
Oh, that's great. I love that idea of belonging because that's what all kids want to feel. Exactly. And of course, adults too. But Seymour, with the things that he does, the not knowing what to do because he just doesn't know, it does make it harder for him to feel like he does belong because other kids don't always understand. Like, why are you bumping into me? Why are you not saying excuse me or checking on me? And so, by learning how to do things differently and become more aware and learn to regulate and just pause and think for a second before you do something, then it is easier to feel like you belong to a group. It is a little easier to feel included. And so, that's my point in writing the stories is the kids I work with are just like Seymour, and they have a hard time and they don't know. And so the social skills groups I have, as well as the individual sessions I do with kids, that's one of the main goals that I have because it is that important. So I love that you're doing that work and helping people like understand like that's important. That's really what parents ask me for support for. They're not asking for academic support. They're not asking for motor skills. Of course, we do work on those things, but what they're wanting is for their children to feel like they belong at school and that they have a community.
Yeah, and we all, it's part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Belonging is way up there for us as one of those really important things that human beings need. And when we marginalize groups like disability groups or someone by their race, gender, or sexuality, right, we really leave people out of that feeling, right?
Right.
And that can be really, really disabling for people all by itself. right? Just that feeling. And so I think what was important about this book, it was sort of like twofold. And it's that, we all need to learn to pause a little bit. We live in a world where everything is rushing at us all the time, and
Yeah.
people want answers fast. They want instant gratification. They want to know as much as they can know in 30 seconds or less, right? And that's the world that we live in. And so it's really easy for us all, whether we're children or adults, to get caught up in not pausing, right? And just rushing ahead in what we do with our lives. I mean, if you picture like the streets of Manhattan in your head, right? And all those people rushing, that's what
Yeah.
it looks like, right? And nobody's pausing.
Right.
Everybody's right on their
Right.
own, right? And that can be really isolating for people to even be that way, right? And I think for folks that are different or who think differently, that's especially the case because we don't, at least autistics and neurodivergence, we don't necessarily glean those social rules
Mhm.
about how we might be bulldozing over people, right? And those kind of things, the way that other people learn them. So we really need, like Seymour needs, direct instruction about how to be mindful, right? And about what to do, how to do it differently. And what I think is really interesting is that the book touches on impulse control, which is something that we see a lot of issues with folks on the spectrum, and people with ADHD, right? They have lots of issues with that impulse control of just going after the thing that they need and not necessarily thinking about the consequences, right? And that's sort of the underlying lesson here with
Yes.
Seymour, is that he didn't want those consequences that he was getting from his actions. And the way that we all shift that is by pausing and taking a mindful moment and thinking about what we can all do differently to not bulldoze over people, right?
Oh,
Um, yeah,
so that explicit instruction, like you mentioned, but also just because you teach it once doesn't mean that they have it. So that's part of the
correct.
impulsivity and sort of someone to help continually teaching, think first and
Right.
preparing,
And also
previewing.
teaching self-awareness. Like if you are able to pass on to someone that they've got struggles with impulse control, that's something that once they're aware of about
Right,
themselves, right, they can do something about it.
right, right,
Especially if it's something that's impacting them, like in adulthood, we see it impacting people's budgets, right? And what they have for their bills versus what's for fun and things like that. And so we do see it continue to be an issue for people all the way into adulthood. But what I think would be great is if one day you wrote a book from Seymour's perspective, right? Because the other part of the
go ahead,
pause
Dave.
is that when some of us take the pause, the world isn't always so receptive to our pausing. Sometimes that makes us feel too slow for people, like we're taking too long to process or give them an answer, right? And when that happens, people feel really pressured to hurry up and give you a response. And it's not necessarily a thought out response or what they want to say to you. It's how we often end up as grown up saying yes to people all the time. We become yes people and we don't learn to say no because we just want to give them an answer. And so there's other parts to the pause, right? If we should all be pausing, but then everybody has to let us pause, right? Like, on the other side of it. So
That's
yeah,
such a great point. Yes. And I think one of the main things that is taught in for teachers in the classroom is give kids that time to think through the answer.
right.
And
And
I
that is
agree
in
with my son.
essence teaching the pause, right? Take your
Right,
time. Think
right.
through the answer, decide what it is you want to do, right? And it's really a similar lesson. So I love it. I think it's just a great way to really, I mean, to teach anybody. There are lots of grown-ups that could use this lesson.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so I thought maybe I could share the screen and show a little bit more about how I pictured being able to teach this with
Yeah,
kids. So here's the title of the book and there's your endorsement, which I very much appreciate. So this is Seymour going to school on his first day, and his sister's with him, and he's got his eye on that red ball, and his sister knows him well and see, oh, that's that impulsive reaction to something exciting. He's going for that ball, but if he does, I've been around him enough to know that this could be a problem because look at all the kids in the line that he's not even noticing. He's got his eye on the ball. So he's not trying to be rude or anything
right.
with the other kids in line or cut in line or anything. He just doesn't even see it, the unaware part that you're talking about. He sees a small part of the picture. So what I did was try to help, and this is what I see so much with the kids I work with. They see a piece of the picture. They're not seeing the whole picture, the bigger picture, another kid might look at that and say, oh, there's a line. And so I gave him goggles because when I can catch something on video or a picture of kids doing something, I show them the video and they're like, oh, I get the message. I don't even have to say anything. So I
Mhm.
thought, well, this helps kids be able to see the bigger picture if I have these future vision goggles. So
Yep.
right now they're showing sort of a conflict uh, because when he tries to go for the ball, you can see the reaction of the other birds. So I was a little bit like, this is one reaction that I think is a typical reaction of kids
Yep.
when something like this happens, when someone's not paying attention to what's going on around them. But I tried to model what the reaction could be if kids had if other kids and the other little birds in line had other tools to work with besides just getting mad. So
Right. It's the
maybe,
other side of the right of the whole coin for him, right? I
right,
think it's so interesting because you do, you can genuinely understand that feeling of only being able to see the red ball, right? We've all had our moments of just
yeah,
being able to see the red ball and only the red ball, right?
right,
And we need someone else to point out to us, well, hey, there's other stuff happening here besides the red ball, and there's an impact of you getting the red ball first, right? And all of
right,
these. And so I love that what you've done is really let people know that there's more than one way that people can respond to these situations, right? There's not just one way. And many times people aren't doing things, with the intent of being rude, right? We clearly Seymour is doing this not because he wants to be mean to the other birds. He's just
right.
completely enamored by the red ball, right? And it's so like
Yeah.
you have to remember when you're on the other side of getting bulldozed, what was the red ball for that person? Why
Yeah.
did they miss us?
Yeah, that curiosity, which is what I tried to do. What could be going
Mhm.
on? But
Yep.
then some of them are more like, hey, be careful. But they're just telling him, be careful, although looks a little annoyed. And the other
Yep.
one's just being clear, stop.
Yep.
So, and then the older birds are trying to help him, and this one says, oh no, the blue-footed booby doesn't know what to do. So an older child, unlike a peer, might be able to understand and might be able to guide those younger birds like, oh, it's his first day, he doesn't know, let's teach him. So I'm trying to help kids imagine other possibilities, like what you're saying, Becca. So his sister says, well, let's look at what was actually going on. And so she slows everything down, and um, and then he sees, oh, this is what was going on, and I don't really like what was happening. That's not my intention. So he's taking a bigger picture now and looking at, oh, well, what does happen in line? And so waiting in line is a huge challenge. Waiting for anything, waiting rather than grabbing from somebody, waiting to try to solve the problem rather than just get upset about it, waiting rather than, like, if you don't get what you want, like pausing for a second and thinking, what could I do? It might require a little bit of waiting. But what do you do when you're waiting? So I tried to model that too with the birds. What are they doing? So this bird is saying what Seymour might be thinking also. I wish I'd gotten the red ball. Oh, well, the blue one will be fun too. So trying to help birds understand that sometimes you don't get well, kids, but birds in the story, you don't get your first choice. And there's still other choices that are satisfactory and good enough, even though they're not your first choice. And that's a really hard lesson I try to help kids with, because like Seymour, I want the red one and only the red one will do. And then the other bird here is saying, oh, I hope I can get the red ball. So hoping, but having an understanding that I might not get it. The other message here is also that when you're waiting in line, if you connect with somebody else in line, the time goes faster also. So you're not just chomping at the bit to get there because it's hard to wait. So there can be fun waiting in line too, with connecting with other kids, other birds. And this bird is acknowledging it is taking a long time. Probably there's discussion at the front of the line about which ball they're going to get. And then this bird saying, inviting Seymour to play with him. So this is what happens. This is the inclusion. When you do wait in line, when you are aware, when you're not bulldozing over someone, then people do want to reach out and say, join me. And then he's reminding himself, I need to keep my wings to myself. And so then he's imagining like, this is going to be fun. This is a way to belong to a game, be part of a game, belong to a group of other birds. And so Seymour's sister recognizes, kind of like what we said at the beginning of the session, it can be hard to remember to do this. So she gives him her little badge that she says she uses to help her remember that pausing and thinking for a minute can be helpful. So on this one, I just created a little ditty to help kids, because I do see that when parents teach kids little sayings like this one, pause, count to 10, wait with friends, that's a win, that can be something I wear. It's something that I can remember to say to myself when I'm waiting in line. Kids do access that. So I'm always impressed when I see kids self-talking to themselves about things like this. And then, of course, I put a future vision of him doing this. In his mind, he's counting to 10 to slow things down and think about what he's going to do. So this is an attempt on my part to help kids actually be able to think through what they could do in the moment and hold on to that literally as well as cognitively holding on to that information. And then I do have a handout that has this so kids can make their own for different situations also. So it's not on the website yet because the book is not actually out yet. But when the book is out, the handouts will be available, and parents or teachers can help kids print out their own. There's a fine motor activity involved with cutting it out and then making their own personal badge that helps them know what to do in certain situations where they need to pause for a second and wait. And then he's retelling the story, which is also an important part of learning. Is this is what I learned. Sometimes it's the adult retelling the story about helping the child feel like, oh, okay, I learned from this. I grew from this. My brain grew. I will know what to do differently next time. So he's saying, well, at first I was so excited to get the one and only red ball that I almost didn't wait in line for my turn. I almost missed the chance to play a game with friends. This is really a critical sentence. Kids don't want to miss out. They want to be part of the fun. And so then he says, then I saw that I can slow down, look around for the end of the line and wait for friends. So that's the explicit teaching. And that makes playing together fun for everyone. And the badge reminds me to pause and think about what I saw with my future vision goggles. So I'll know what to do next time I wait in line. So that's the main idea. Like, that's the conclusion. Yes, that's what we want kids to be able to remember from the story. And in my experience, kids, I've read lots of books that I've written to kids, and they do want to be like the characters in the story. They do see that this is what other kids are. This is exactly how they want to be if they knew how to be like that. So they just need practice and guidance through stories like this, reminders, practicing those kinds of things with the guidance and support of an adult who can help them. And so that's just the ending of the book. So he gets his red ball, and the big birds say to him, have a ball, and they laugh at the joke. So I wanted to show, did you have any other comments about the story, Becca? Because I was going to just let people know, because I know time is running out for us, that I do have the handouts that I mentioned. And so there's like step-by-step drawing, and this is a handout about how to stop and pause. What does that look like? So these are things that adults can do with kids. Some fun activities for kids, reminding them, reviewing the kinds of things that are going to help kids remember to pause. And these are things, this is a great handout I created because waiting is such a difficult thing, and things that parents can do to help their child learn about waiting. So all kinds of resources there. And then there's more little activities for kids as well. Here's the goggles they can make and some coloring. And then there's even a little game about waiting. So that's all that I wanted to share, but do you have concluding remarks, Becca?
No, I really think that it's a really great book, and I think it's got lessons in it for everyone. And so I really hope that folks kind of feel drawn to it and they can learn a little bit about practicing the pause themselves.
Great. Thank you so much, Becca. I really appreciate your time
My
and
pleasure.
your input.